Welcome to Just Start, Get Visible, your go-to resource of the journey to becoming more visible in a way that feels right for you. Hey there. Welcome back to yet another episode of Just Start, Get Visible. It's Jacqueline M here. Let's get to work. After a fantastic episode, the last one, number 262, it's only right that after our anchor episode at the top of every month, I give you a lot more to go deeper because you deserve that. If we're going to tap into this world of just starting and getting visible in a way that feels right to you, I have to come to you and give you some practical tips to make sure that you can actually do that. And so let's get into it today. This month, we're exploring a question that many of us are asking ourselves. What does visibility really look like when it's rooted in you being authentic rather than being performative? Okay, because I want that for you. I want you to feel like, yep, I'm getting visible in a way that feels right for me. It feels authentic to me because it's going to come across in the best possible way when you do it that way. In episode 262, as a reminder, I sat down with Kaylan Martin. If you haven't listened to or watched that episode, I encourage you to rewind right back. Head over to JacquelineMBaker.com/262 or listen wherever you get your podcast to discuss aligned visibility, which is a lot of what she focused on. And one of the ideas that stayed with me long after our conversation was over is the fact that visibility is not the same thing as being everywhere. It's actually exhausting. It's an exhausting thought, an exhausting pressure to think that you have to be everywhere. But often we think that. When I say get visible, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to be here, there, and everywhere. Yet somewhere along the way, many of us begin to believe that if we're not constantly posting, if we're not constantly networking and speaking and commenting and sharing and showing up and being seen and being on the scene, then somehow we're falling behind. And it creates pressure. And once again, it is exhausting. And often, the more we try to be visible everywhere, the less connected we actually feel to ourselves and to the things that we actually want to start. So today's episode is a bit of a reminder that visibility does not require omnipresence. You do not have to be everywhere. You simply need to be intentional about where you choose to be seen. So let's get into it today. I have 5 stops that we're going to make in this brief, but in fact, impactful conversation, all focused on visibility, but not visibility that means that you need to be everywhere. Okay. I really do think that one of the biggest misconceptions about visibility is that it requires volume. Okay. More posts, more events, more platforms, more content, more networking, more exposure. And for many people, visibility has quietly become a numbers game where it's like, okay, if I'm not doing numbers, whatever numbers means in your mind, right? Or whatever numbers means as you're observing that for other people, then it becomes a problem. But come on, let's just be honest here. Visibility is not really measured by how many places you appear at, right? It's measured by how clearly people understand who you are and what you stand for. I know some people like Kaylan, for example, she's not putting points on the board or numbers on the board in terms of how much she shows up everywhere. It's about how she feels when she shows up. It's about her committing to the spaces that she feels strongly about and being true to that versus like, did my impressions on whatever show up in this possible way? Well, maybe you're not even in a line of work or you don't even care about impressions overall. You're trying to connect in real life. So I want you to take a second now and just think about the people you admire. Often it isn't because they're everywhere, right? It's because they're consistent. You know what they care about. You know what they represent when they show up. You know what they value. The visibility is anchored in flat out clarity overall and not volume, not being in your face all the time. And I want you to embrace that that's a really important decision and an important distinction. Because when visibility becomes about a volume game, like how much you can show up, it quickly becomes performative because you're just doing it just to show up, to be on the scene. But it's on the scene where you even want to be anyway. Okay. You start doing things when you're focused on volume because you think that you're supposed to. Kaylan talked about this in episode number 262, not because the things align with your goals, your personality, or even your season of life. And so ask yourself, am I playing a numbers game right now? Are you in the visibility trap of just feeling like I need to be everywhere? Because if you are, then it might be time for us to pause and really think like, where did this come from? Okay, so I want to venture into number 2. Where did this pressure of feeling like we need to be everywhere, where did that even come from? And let's just start out with some flat out honesty here. Many of us are receiving visibility advice from people whose goals are way different from our own. All right. Maybe you are enamored by somebody's presence online or maybe even in real life. And you are measuring where you think you should show up based on where they're showing up when you may not even have the same goals. Right. If somebody wants to become a full-time content creator, right, their visibility strategy may require daily content. You see them in your face all the time. Why? Because they are trying to be a full-time content creator. And that's literally their job, is to be up and down your timeline, convincing you of stuff, making you laugh, trying to sell you stuff. And that may not even be what you're trying to do at all. If someone wants to build a million person audience, right? They want to have a ton of people in the audience, for example, their approach may look completely different, right? And maybe neither of those things are where you see yourself from a visibility standpoint. Not everybody wants that stuff. Maybe some people do, and you've landed here at the podcast, and that's cool. And we're all about getting visible in a way that feels right for you. But not everyone wants that. Some people want a thriving consulting practice. Maybe you want a much lower profile, but you want your consulting practice to thrive. So get visible in a way that feels right for you. Some people want to become a stronger leader inside their organization. So you showing up online might not be even something that's important to you. Maybe you showing up on your intranet within your organization, or maybe even making sure that you're building credibility on LinkedIn in a way that feels right for you. Some people listening might want to build more meaningful relationships, IRL, in real life. Some people want their expertise to be recognized in the field that they're in overall. Those are all very different goals, right? But we're getting our inspiration maybe from one vessel and one type of vessel, one type of looking vessel that might be somebody that has completely different goals of ours. And different goals requires different visibility strategies overall. One of the most freeing realizations that I encourage you to have right now is that you are absolutely allowed to define success before you define visibility. What does success look like for you? Because if you go just trying to be everywhere and do everything, then it may not even align with what success even means for you. Because once you know what success looks like, it becomes way easier to decide where your visibility actually belongs. Not just trying to be on the scene and be everywhere to everybody when it doesn't align with your goals all the time. Okay. So let's just reflect here. Like, where'd that even come from? I told you where it came from. But now let's talk about visibility versus accessibility. And Kaylan talked about this a bit back in episode number 262. Another fantastic nugget. If you want more, rewind back to that. The distinction between visibility and accessibility has become increasingly important, right? It's critical actually at this point, considering the amount of content and information that we are exposed to all the time. Visibility does not mean unlimited access. Okay, remember we went through that season of the world of always talking about your most authentic self. Transparency was the word, every other word, right? And I love those things to a certain degree, but sometimes we conflate that with unlimited access, believing that literally you need to be on in people's faces all the time. I was watching this clip on a major news outlet recently about this woman who has chosen to live stream her whole life. Like every day, all day, she's online. And I think when we think visibility, like our mind goes towards that, like, oh my God, I got to get up and stage getting out of the bed every day and in the shower and doing my hair. No, right? It doesn't mean unlimited access to your life, because people can see that when you do things that aren't truly aligned, when you're just being like on the scene everywhere all the time, like it's not meaningful if that's not what you're looking to accomplish. Okay. Just because people can see you does not mean that they are entitled to every part of you, especially if you don't want that. And most of us don't want that. One of the things that Kaylan and I discussed was the idea that visibility can include deciding what remains private, because you have that right to remain private in the parts that you want to remain private. That's not hiding, right? That's discernment. There are aspects of your life that can absolutely remain yours. And I encourage it to remain yours. There are seasons that can remain sacred. There are some people that pop out married, pop out engaged, pop out pregnant, pop out with a new business, pop out with a whole bunch of things. And some people want to experience that season in a sacred way. There's some people I know who have kids, and other people don't even know that they have kids, right? They keep that part of their life sacred because that's important to them. And that is perfectly fine. There are decisions that can be made quietly. There are experiences that don't need an audience. Everybody doesn't need to know everything, because does it align with the visibility and the places that you want to go, the things that you're trying to accomplish? The healthiest visibility strategies often include boundaries, things that you're going to share and not share, places you're going to show up and not show up, because boundaries allow you to remain connected to yourself, right? The things that are important to you, the things that you hold close to your chest overall. And when you remain connected to yourself, your visibility becomes more sustainable versus like trying to be everywhere all the time. You stop performing and you start embodying, right? Kayla talks about embodying as well, being particular and being specific about where you want to show up that is in support and in alignment with how you want to be visible. All right. So I want you to remember that visibility versus accessibility is a discernment opportunity. It's a way for you to really think about, how am I being visible, but also knowing that that doesn't mean unlimited access. You have an opportunity, as we move into point number 4, you have an opportunity to create your visibility filter, right? How are you filtering out what you want to share and what you don't want to share? Whenever I work with leaders and all types of leaders, people leaders, individual contributors, startup leaders, I encourage them to think about visibility through a filter, right? Before saying yes to an opportunity, ask yourself, right, some questions. And these are the types of questions that I encourage them to ask. Does this opportunity support where I'm trying to go? All right. Not where someone else is trying to go. Because you may see and be enamored by someone else's path, their goal, their success. However, you can be enamored, you can be impressed by it, but is it actually where I want to go? All right. So does this opportunity, whatever this opportunity is, this visibility opportunity, does it support where I'm trying to go? Not where someone else is trying to go, not where social media says I should go, where I'm actually trying to go. Okay. Question 2 that I want you to consider is, does this opportunity align with my strengths, the things that I do well? Some people shine on stages, right? I happen to be very comfortable on stages, but let's be honest. I've been on stages for a really long time. Since the 4th grade, I have been on stages, legit. All right. And so my comfort, I've grown into that comfort. So I don't ever say to anyone, you have to be on stages to be successful. Instead, I say, hey, if you're comfortable with exploring the world of being on stages to inspire people, even for compensation purposes, if you choose to, you can go down this journey of learning how to become more confident at it. But I'm not going to say just anybody just jump on stage because I do it, right? Other people shine in small groups. You may be someone that shines in a small group. Some people excel through writing. Okay. I say all the time, like, I'm an author, but it's not my most confident area of communicating. I do it because I want to reach people where they are as it relates to learning about leadership and other things that I feel like I have expertise in. However, like, I'm very clear that's something that I've had to grow into from a visibility standpoint. Others, they get visible or they feel more comfortable through teaching, and perhaps that's you as well. Perhaps you're thinking, hey, I don't mind standing up and speaking and presenting, but all in the spirit of teaching. Other people, they are more comfortable through relationship building, whether in small groups or large groups, so you may do well in community. I want you to remember that visibility comes in many forms. But I would just want to ask you, because you think about being visible, especially that first step, ask yourself, does this opportunity align with my strengths? Because many times we can lean into and really be great in our strengths in ways that we can't be in our weaknesses. Okay. Question 3, I want you to ask, and I want you to be clear about this and think about it thoroughly. Will this opportunity energize or drain me? Now, I'm really careful about this question. And the reason why is because I think sometimes we shy away from things that we think drain us, or we shy away from things that we may be nervous about or have a little bit of anxiety about, and we put it in the drain us category. And not necessarily because it's draining, but because we're scared or we're nervous. Okay. And so I really want you to think thoroughly about this one before you're just like, no, it drains me, when in fact it's something else. That's another feeling of like, okay, this is new to me. And so I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm a little scared. I say all the time, like, we can do hard stuff. So will this opportunity, in you thinking about it, will it energize or drain you? But are you sure that it would drain you? Or is that fear trying to keep you safe? Is that your amygdala in your brain saying, danger, danger, we've never seen this before, right? So will this opportunity energize you or drain you? And I invite you to think about a couple things in that vein of questioning. Everything requires energy, right? Everything that we do requires some level of energy. The goal is not to avoid effort, right? And that's the reason why I'm challenging you to really think about, does it drain me or does it scare me a little bit? The goal is to invest effort wisely, okay? Because you may be thinking, hey, I could do this thing. It scares me a little bit. However, it's going to require an intense amount of effort for me to get this done. And so, therefore, it does drain me, right? It's not a matter of, it's just draining me overall. It's a matter of like, I'm going to have so much anxiousness and so much fear that's bottled up with it that it is going to drain me. But don't just say that it drains you just because it drains you in terms of leaning into the fear. So ask yourself, would this opportunity energize or drain me? Everything requires energy. It's just a fact, right? The goal is not to avoid it, right? To let the fear tell you not to do it, but to think about, am I investing my efforts wisely? Okay. And the last question I want you to think about in this broad scheme of creating your visibility filter is, am I doing this because it matters or because I'm afraid of missing out? Are you succumbing to FOMO and the FOMO is not benefiting you? All right. That question alone can save you from a lot of unnecessary commitments. And I think about this actually very similarly to how I think about why I speak. I was just explaining this to someone that reached out to me just earlier today because he recently wrote a book and he was talking or he's asking me my advice about book writing and where I choose to show up and how the book has helped me to be in spaces to be more impactful, etc. And I was telling him that I think about when I speak overall, that's one of my visibility pockets. I think about my speaking commitments in terms of a 100% pie. And I divide that pie into three slices. Okay. I speak for one of three reasons. I speak because someone is compensating me in an area that I consider to have expertise or significant value, information, insight. They are compensating me at a rate in which I propose and ask them for. The second reason why I speak is because it is a strategic opportunity to be in a space or to be more in a space. So I'm still being compensated, but maybe at a different rate. And third, I speak because it feels good. Some community organization who has no budget but does great work, right? In spaces that I care about, asks me to show up. I can provide value, but perhaps financially they can't compensate me. So that feels good. That's my feel good bucket. 15 to 20 years ago, my percentages of where I put in that pie are completely different. Right now, it's probably 70, 20, 10. 70% of the time, I'm usually paid at a rate that I asked for. 20% of the time, it's a strategic move, a strategic decision. And 10% of the time, it feels good. Like I want to do that. I want to do good in the community, in spaces that I care deeply about. 15 to 20 years ago, this pie looked completely different, right? It could have been 20% I'm paid at the rate that I actually asked for. 70% is a strategic move, right? And 10% it feels good, or any variation of that. And honestly, the reason why I make sure that I'm clear about these percentages here is because it takes my ego out of it. It is not me saying, well, I'm going to show up in all these spaces for free, right? Because number one, I'm running an organization that relies on my stage expertise for awareness, for visibility, for funneling, for opportunities, etc. But also, it eliminates the FOMO for me. Like, no, like I can't be showing up in all these places because I feel like I'm missing out because it does not fit the percentages that I know are meaningful for me right now. And so you can use that pie theory in lots of different places of your life, but it's worked really well for me over the time, throughout time. And it helps me to keep my ego out of it, right? It helps me to say, hey, I'm not signing up for stuff because I am trying to make sure I'm not missing out. I'm signing up for stuff because this is the way that I choose to be visible in a way that feels right for me. And it keeps me from making unnecessary commitments. So I ask you to think about all these questions and to create your visibility filter. And lastly, the last thing I'll ask you to consider is what visibility actually looks like in real life. Because I can say get visible, get visible, get visible, and I'm going to keep saying it, right? But I always want you to make it practical because visibility could look like a lot of different things. Visibility can look like sharing one thoughtful LinkedIn post each week, just something thoughtful that you may even leverage Google Alerts or some other like content distillation process or some content filter that you might use. It could look like speaking up during meetings because you lay in the cut and let things come to you. But now is it time for you to perk up a little bit, get visible so that you can be considered for the promotion. You can be considered for a promotion from individual contributor to people leader, a space that I care deeply about. Perhaps getting visible also means raising your hand for a stretch project. Perhaps all the goals that you have on your list right now, you can accomplish those things. It's like, I'm going to get that done. But is it time for you to stretch a little bit? Maybe you're going to publish an article, maybe on a platform like LinkedIn, maybe on some type of Substack or blog blog platform overall. Perhaps that's how you choose to stretch and get visible. Maybe you decide to host a conversation. You know some people in your friend circle and they could really benefit from, financial advisement, right? Something that everybody maybe in your family, your friend circle, you're like, "Hey, you know what? That's how I want to get visible. I want to get visible by being a resource to the people around me." Maybe it's mentoring someone, maybe it's joining an association, maybe it's launching a podcast, maybe it's writing a book, maybe it's attending community events consistently, right? So, do you notice something here? I hope that you notice throughout this list that I just spat out. First of all, none of those require you to be everywhere. Just because you host a book club doesn't mean that you need to do a TED talk. Just because you decide to host an article or post an article or have a conversation doesn't mean that you need to overall be everywhere networking all the time. They just simply require intentionality because visibility is not about maximizing your exposure everywhere. It truly is about increasing alignment between who you are and how other people experience you. Because when those two things begin to match up, visibility becomes a lot easier. It feels much more easier because you're not trying to manage multiple versions of yourself. Right? You're literally just trying to lean more into how you want to just start and get visible in a way that feels right for you. So as we wrap up this episode, I want you to think about something. I'm going to give you a couple of reflection exercises. I'm going to leave you with really a couple of things to consider. Where am I currently trying to be more visible because I genuinely want to be there? You genuinely want to be there. You don't want it to feel forced, like you genuinely want to be in this space. And then I want you to ask yourself, where am I showing up simply because I feel like I should? You feel like you should. So where am I currently trying to be more visible because I genuinely want to be there? And then I want you to follow up that question. Where am I showing up simply because I feel like I should? And I want you to take some time, either now, you can pause this episode and do the work and push play again, or you can do it later on. I want you to just take a few minutes and write down your answers because you might discover that some of your visibility efforts are deeply aligned, right? You may also discover a few places where you're carrying unnecessary pressure, where you're like, I've just been showing up here because I committed to this a while ago. I've already checked the box on my commitment, but I just feel like I should, but it's not even serving me anymore. And both of those insights are valuable. It lets you get the data to make the decisions. Like, should I actually be showing up here? And is it in alignment with where I'm at and where I'm trying to head to? As we close out today's episode, I want you to remember that visibility is not always about being seen by everyone. It's about being seen by the right people in the right places for the right reasons. You don't need to be everywhere. And more importantly, I don't want you to feel like you need to perform, right? You do not need to perform. And you don't need to force yourself into visibility strategies that don't fit who you are. But often the most powerful visibility is the kind that feels natural, sustainable, and true to who you already are. So I want to thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Just Start, Get Visible. You know that there's always the challenge for you to get out there, to just start and get visible in a way that feels right for you. But I'm hoping that as you reflect on these 5 quick points today, how you can get caught up in the visibility trap, really remembering where that pressure came from, sometimes from us comparing ourselves to people online that we don't even want to be in the first place. Right? Understanding that distinct difference between visibility and accessibility. Everybody doesn't need to have access to you all the time. Creating your visibility filter, right? And asking yourself those questions that will help you to determine, do I need to be visible or do I not need to be visible? And lastly, what visibility actually looks like in real life. In this episode with you, I really wanted to go a lot deeper as we were coming off of episode number 262, which was so meaningful. And since the rest of the episodes throughout the month of June are going to be connected to episode number 262, I just invite you to go listen to it, go watch it, have it playing in the background, right? Or not, take some notes because it's a very entertaining and also very meaty conversation with Kaylan Martin. I want you to experience visibility that feels aligned. And I wanted to have somebody on that was willing to talk about real things to really give you something to think about and some actions to take. Okay. So wherever you're at in the world, I hope that you're safe. I hope that you're healthy and I hope that you're well. And I certainly hope that you're giving yourself permission to start the things that you want to do and truly get visible in a way that feels right for you. Remember, take care of yourself. And of course, I'll see you again soon. Ciao. Welcome to Just Start, Get Visible, your go-to resource on the journey to becoming more visible in a way that feels right for you.